Hello and good day to everyone. Today, we would like to present our findings and analysis of the report entitled Why Productivity is Slowing Down. This report measures productivity as output per worker or labor, so we find that the theories learned in Solo model can help us to explain some of the factors affecting productivity. We start by the basic equation of Solo model, which states that the output, Y, is a function of human capital, physical capital, and an exogenous parameter, A, named TFP or total factor productivity. In order to get output per worker, we would simply divide this whole equation by the total population. Applying the rules of growth accounting and taking logarithm on both sides, we get an equation describing the growth of productivity, which is the sum of the growth of the three terms in the Solo equation. Note that in this report, the FP has been divided into two categories, namely technology and allocative efficiency, and mismeasurement has been added as a factor. We decided to narrow down our focus on two most important factors affecting productivity, which are capital deepening, referring to physical capital, and labor composition or human capital. Firstly, slowdown in productivity can be explained by the slowdown in capital deepening, which refers to a fall in the growth of capital per worker. From an accounting point of view, the slowdown is mostly due to traditional capital, which is non-ICT physical capital, while ICT capital and intangibles have also contributed to the productivity slowdown. The report reviewed two sets of explanations: cyclical effects linked to the 2008 global crisis, such as credit constraints and weak demand, and more circular or structural factors that are independent of the business cycle, such as the changing nature of investment towards intangibles, which are riskier and harder to finance. The report listed three explanations for a cyclical crisis-driven slowdown of investment. The first is that the crisis led to a substantial increase in financial frictions. The returns on productive capital, including intangible intellectual property products, have remained relatively stable at around 6.5% in the US, while the returns on safe assets have decreased, suggesting a substantial increase in the risk premium. In the UK, credit frictions have contributed to a half of the 9.3% fall in the labour productivity levels. The second explanation for pro-cyclical investment behaviour is that depressed aggregate demand led to slower investment growth. It is estimated that the demand shock from the financial crisis may explain half of the decreased contribution of capital to labour productivity growth. This is due to the accelerator effect, which states that a change in national income would lead to a larger change in investment through the effect of income on demand. The third is that government investment also fell post-crisis, contributing around a fifth of the fall of investment as a share of GDP in OECD countries, with potentially longer run and harder to measure consequences for productivity. Secular or structural factors can be explained by the changing pattern of investment towards intangibles. Some examples of intangibles include R&D, research and development, and patents. The report described intangible capital and its consequences using 4S. The first one, it is more scalable because it is essentially non-rival and with low marginal cost, creating economies of scale that may increase concentration. Second, it is more sunk because it is more uniquely linked to the firms that originally created it. This makes intangible capital a fixed cost, which creates barriers to entry. Intangible capital is more conducive of spillovers because of non-rivalry and non-excludability of knowledge. This lack of appropriability may weaken the incentive to invest. And finally, intangible capital has strong synergies with IT capital, so that these large complementarities in investment, if associated with adjustment costs, can largely explain long lags in diffusion. To see how intangibles can have a significant effect on productivity, We use the theories learned in the Romer model, which explains the economics of ideas. In a simple Romer model, it is stated that output is a function of ideas or knowledge and workers. The difference between Solow and Romer models is that the parameter A is exogenous in the Solow model and endogenous in the Romer model. Hence, we have another equation describing idea accumulation, which states that new ideas are derived from existing ideas and researches with a constant parameter z. Note that the parameter A exists in both equations. This means ideas or knowledge have increasing returns to scale. In contrast, physical capital has a decreasing returns to scale due to diminishing marginal productivity of capital. This implies that a slowdown in intangibles will have a worse effect on productivity than a slowdown in capital deepening. Hence, Goodrich suggested that part of the TFP growth slowdown might be due to missing lagged spillovers resulting from the slowdown of R&D investment in the 90s and 2000s. We then move on to human capital or labor composition. The report identified 5 main channels through which labor markets may have contributed to the slowdown in TFP. In a traditional framework, wages equal the marginal product of labor, therefore a wage rise increases output. In this case, a general slowdown in educational or skill achievement could hinder productivity. Most studies suggest that labor composition generally improves throughout the time in review, therefore educational attainment rarely explains the slowdown. A rising skills gap may explain the productivity downturn. At times of rapid technological development, new technology skills are scarce and skill-biased technological change affect a variety of occupations. The second one is aging. Aging has 3 potential effects on productivity. First, a direct influence due to a correlation between age and productivity, which shows no substantial association. Second, a structural shift effect due to changing demand patterns towards low productivity growth sectors. And the last one, a macroeconomic effect on saving rates. Retirement savings would increase with lower and negative population growth rates. At the same time, a higher saving rate would then reduce consumption and investment prospects for corporations. Migration is proposed by Oulton to be the cause of labour productivity growth slowdown in the UK, such that a slowdown in export growth combined with growth in labour inputs from immigration reduced capital accumulation. Leisure technology is also seen as a factor affecting labour productivity. The more resources are allocated to leisure technology, such as gaming, the lower the labour participation rates and the long-run labour productivity growth. The last one deals with labour market institutions. Labour hoarding, in which employers keep people on the payroll despite decreased demand to prevent future rehiring expenses, reduces output by preserving labour inputs. Job reallocation, particularly in the US, may be diminishing due to greater regulation restricting labour mobility, which may also explain declining productivity growth. Self-employment, zero-hour contracts, and the gig economy may have contributed to a surge in unskilled labour in the UK. The gig economy may impair labour productivity due to weaker skill acquisition than long-term job contracts. Yet, such platforms improve service utilization, talent matching especially for rarer abilities, and reduce hiring expenses. Furthermore, given the quantitatively significant effects of reduced discrimination on output, a delay in discrimination reduction may have contributed to the productivity slowdown. To sum up, given that the composition of the labor force evolves gradually, at least in the majority of nations, changes in human capital as assessed by growth accounting have not significantly contributed to the productivity slowdown. While slow changes cannot completely explain the sharp drop in productivity since the 2000s, they may have compounded the slowdown. That's all from us. Thank you.